All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our DORR breakfast. I'm Ellen Ferreira. I'm the president of Democrats of the Red Rocks, and we welcome you. We do these breakfasts every third Friday of every month. It is part of the mission of Democrats of the Red Rocks to educate the community. And so that's what we try to do. We've had some wonderful programs. They are all recorded. They are all on the DORR YouTube channel. So feel free to browse and take a look at whichever ones are of interest to you. They're all pretty good. We've gotten some excellent speakers. How many of you here were at the fundraiser for Ruben Gallego last Friday night? Wow, that's a lot. I don't know what you're seeing online, Toby, but that is a lot of people here. It was a tremendously successful event. We had over 100 people. We raised close to $20,000. Community like this is really, really wonderful. And so not only do we raise money, not only do we raise the awareness of Sedona and the Verde Valley amongst the candidates and their staffs, but we build the camaraderie amongst our tribe that you can't build anywhere, any other way, but by being together and interacting and getting to know one another. It's so, so important. So we did a fabulous job on that, and congratulations to everybody who was there and everybody who contributed. Before we get started today, I want to also acknowledge our behind the scenes people that make these breakfasts happen. Jeff Dissinger is for every single breakfast. He is the one that helps make this possible to be a hybrid meeting so that some of us can be on Zoom and others can be here in the room. We also have a person that you never see, but she's behind the scenes too, and that is Shelley Haken, who is sitting there in her house in Cottonwood running the Zoom call from her desk. We have Toby Friedman, who's back in the corner there, who is very visible. And because her face is everywhere, she's behind every event that happens here in Sedona and the Verde Valley, well, Sedona for sure. So thank you, Toby. For the people who were not at the Ruben Gallego event, I will once again just mention briefly that we are going to have celebrations throughout the Verde Valley called 1 Year Out, Countdown to Democracy. The weekend of November 3rd, 4th, and 5th, which is 1 year from the elections next year. What we're asking is, and this is going to be a fundraiser for DORR because we don't anticipate doing fundraisers next year. When we raise money, it's going to all be for the candidates. We're asking people to open their homes and have a party, either for their friends or people that DORR will assign to your house. You tell us when. It can be a football party Sunday afternoon. It could be a cocktail party Saturday night. Whatever you want, whatever hours, however many hours you want, we will and Tom. Whatever you want, you tell us the way you would like to entertain, and we will be there to back you up. We're charging $40 a head for everybody who comes to your party. You are the one that is responsible for the drinks, the beverages, and the food. However, we have a lot of people that have volunteered through the DORR survey to cook or to bake. They like to do that. And so if you request, I need some kind of hors d'oeuvres or some kind of desserts or things like that, we will ask people to do sort of that and to help supplement your party. So if you're interested, speak to me afterward, that would be great. Another important thing that's we've been hearing about for months, but it's actually coming to fruition now, is a citizens initiative for the ballot in 2024. This will be to get abortion rights enshrined into the Arizona Constitution. Before that can happen, however, we need to gather enough signatures on petitions from registered voters in Arizona to put that measure on the ballot in 2024, November of 2024. We estimate that we will need to get approximately 500,000 signatures. Statewide, this is not all going to have to come from Sedona. We would be in trouble.
That's a lot of it.
However, we want to do the best that we can. And so if you would be interested in being a petition circulator, in other words, carry them in the passenger seat of your car. And if you go somewhere where there's people or friends and you want to ask them, would you like to sign this petition? That would be very helpful. In order to do that, you must go through an online 1-hour training. I went through the training. It is important that you know what to do, what not to do, how to answer questions, what not to answer. So if somebody from the press comes up to you, if somebody comes and tries to engage you in an argument, walk away. What you have to ask of the people who are signing your petition, things like that. So if you would like to be a petition circulator, I'm going to circulate this around, put your name on here, and we will contact you. Most likely Toby, our Energizer Bunny, will contact you. And we'd love to have all the help that we can get. Okay, that is my agenda. Messaging. Today's program is about messaging. We all know how important messaging is. I watched a program yesterday that was talking about a group called the Daughters of the Confederacy. It was founded shortly after the end of the Civil War. The Daughters of the Confederacy called the conflict the War of Northern Aggression. They were the ones who first talked about all the wonderful skills and trades that the slaves learned while they were being slaves.
Oh, good for them.
Good for them. I know, what an opportunity. But their influence was very widespread. And they were able to get things like the War of Northern Aggression put into textbooks in the South. And look how this kind of a thing can magnify, because you're still seeing people driving around with Confederate flags, and they've learned this somewhere. It's not their parents, it's not their great grandparents. This is perpetuating, myths that are dangerous. And so the same kind of thing is happening now. We're seeing it all over the place. DORR puts out a monthly newsletter called Keeping Posted. The mother of Keeping Posted is Janine Reno. Is one of our members. She has super research skills, great tenacity, great writing ability, and she has come up with so many topical Keeping Posted articles or actually newsletters that we try to pair with the subjects of our breakfasts. So they're sent to you about a week prior to the breakfast. I hope you open the Keeping Posted because they are all excellent. They're also all available on the DORR website. So please go and refer to those because they're excellent. So today, Janine is with us. She will introduce our speakers for the day. And welcome. Enjoy the program.
I'm delighted to welcome the women that make up Words That Win, Allie Feldman, Lisa Wagner, and Melissa Knudsen. They're a all-volunteer trio who are going to train us today on strategic messaging, which is so crucial during this era of hateful politics and disinformation. These strategies will make it easier for you to talk with voters, write letters to the editor, call Congress, talk with your family, and help make the needed change in our country. These women met in 2020 at the Service Employees International Union Conference in Philadelphia, where they heard the brilliant progressive messaging expert Annette Schenker-Osario give a speech. They were so inspired by her messaging strategies that they felt the need to spread the word to other progressive organizations. And Ali was also a longtime admirer of Ian Haney Lopez, a professor of public law at Berkeley who specializes in racial and social justice. He's the author of several books, including Dog Whistle Politics, where he details the 50-year history of how politicians exploit racial pandering to fracture the social solidarity and ultimately convince many voters to support rule by the rich. We'll also email you today's recording so you can watch it again with the slides and resources next week. And Democrats of the Red Rocks is very grateful to Words That Win that they're joining us today. We're very lucky. We're in for a treat. So now I'll turn it over to them so they can begin the training.
Hi, it's Allie. Thank you so much for having us here. We are delighted to be here. So let me just get oriented. And so again, my name is Allie. I am joined by Lisa Wagner, and Melissa will be joining us momentarily. As Janine said, we spent the last few years bringing some of the best research-based strategic messaging frameworks and practices to progressive groups. And after the presentation, there's no need to take notes. We will send you all the slides containing our resources and through your emails. And the hyperlinks that you see on the slides, when we send in the email, they will be clickable in the PDF. So you are welcome to click on them and read more in detail if you'd like. And then we have your emails. If you logged in with a different email to join the Zoom other than the registration email, then please let Janine know so that we have the right email to send everything to. And with that, we are ready to jump in. Here's the agenda for our webinar. We will go over the fundamentals of strategic messaging, understanding the intent of dog whistle politics, the 3V sandwiches, the 3V sandwich, brownies, some do's and don'ts, and we will end with a Q&A. So keep in mind that the examples that we present are designed to demonstrate general strategic messaging principles. And if you have any questions along the way, please drop them in the chat. And with that, I will pass it to Lisa.
Hi, everybody. I don't know if any of you share my love of reading advice columnists, but I do highly recommend it if you want to get a sense of what everyday Americans are really thinking about. It's often not politics, just as a hint. The columnists who answer these letters often tell the letter writers that, you can't control what others do or say, but you can control your response. And it turns out that political messaging is similar. Much of the framework of the messaging we've referenced today is based on the work of Ian Haney Lopez, who Janine summarized very well. Anat Shenker-Osorio, who is a public policy expert by training, but who brought the linguistic research of George Lakoff and others out to political advocates, and Heather McGee, who, while working with the Demos policy and research team, developed race-forward progressive policy ideas and analyses for policymakers and grassroots organizers. So it turns out that people want nice things. And this is not just progressives. We're not talking about luxury cars or yachts, but nice universally desired things like clean air and water, affordable housing, nutritious food and enough of it, access to affordable health care, good schools for their kids, reliable transportation, safe neighborhoods. However, as we all know, some people, especially those with means, have a much easier time accessing those nice things than others. Why do you think that is? Although a majority of Americans support progressive politics, we still see a significant dislike and distrust of government, and the buck started here. For over 50 years, the opposition has used dog whistle politics to divide us. Dog whistles are coded language that use seemingly innocuous words that some people can hear. On the surface, the language appears unobjectionable, but it communicates specific things to its intended audiences and tends to provoke an emotional reaction. Ian Haney Lopez has identified how racism is used strategically as a weapon of the rich against all of us. Most of us tend to believe that racism arises out of the personal bigotry of certain white people and that it only harms people of color. That's part of the story, but it's not the whole story. Some of you may remember how starting in the 1980s, Lee Atwater began making dog whistle racism a pillar of GOP campaigns via the Southern strategy. The right wing and the wealthy learned to use dog whistles to weaponize the common human need to feel superior to someone, no matter how poor one's own circumstances are. They do this to turn us against each other and maintain the elite's power, which keeps us from seeing who's really running off with our country's wealth. This is a very big topic, and we strongly urge you to listen to Ian Haney Lopez's Race Class Academy, which is hyperlinked at the bottom of this page. It goes into a lot more detail. So the take-home message is that the primary organizing principle of the MAGA Republican Party is that a minority of people, specifically rich white men, should be in charge of the majority. This is not a bug, it's a feature, and it's been basically baked into our systems since the founding fathers needed to get the southern slave states to sign on to the Constitution. So as we on the left work toward building a multiracial democracy that will serve all of us, Republicans are really doubling down on their divide and conquer playbook, using racial scapegoating, dog whistles, and divisive rhetoric to mischaracterize us and to try to paint us into corners. But be aware that while color blindness is a physical visual deficit, it is not an effective messaging strategy. Research shows that not talking about race and class does not end the conversation. It just means that the only voices being heard are the right-wing name callers. Messaging that leans into and acknowledges our differences, including race, actually outperforms economic-only statements in rebutting conservative talking points. Now, Allie will talk about our audience.
So how many of you are sports fans? And how many don't care about sports at all? And how many may care if your team makes it into the Super Bowl or the World Series? Well, politics is the same way. Activists like us are deeply engaged. We follow the stats, the players, the details, but we're not like everybody else. When we talk about messaging, it's really important to know your audience, the base, persuadable voters, and the opposition. Our base shares our values, so they may respond differently to certain messages. The opposition holds opposing views. And then we have voters in the middle. They're often referred to as moderates, but as Ian Haney Lopez points out in the article linked in this slide, these voters do not hold nuanced centrist views. Rather, they're conflicted. They bounce between progressive and reactionary views of the world. They may gravitate to whatever sounds good in the moment. They hear a pitch and they think, that's a good idea. And then they hear the opposite and they think, that's a good idea. So we call these conflicted voters the good point people. Commercial brands spend about 70% of their marketing budget on their super users or influencers. This is our base. We need to sell our message to our base so they will help spread the words well beyond our bubbles and inspire persuadables to join in. Repetition and amplification of strategic, coordinated, disciplined messaging is loud, powerful, and it goes a long way. As for the opposition, those who do not share our values, we are not going to win them over. So we're not going to waste our time trying to. And this is what we are up against and why we need to become the loudest voice in the room, which means repeating and coordinating our messaging. And we need to communicate that we are stronger together in our messaging. So a quick recap. We need to leverage our differences to build a cross-racial, cross-class coalition so that we stand united, fighting for what we want, what we need, and always remembering that the other side is trying to divide us so they can increase their wealth and power. We need to win over the conflicted voters, also known as the good point people. And we have to speak up loudly, consistently, and frequently, because if we remain silent, the other side will fill the vacuum with their dog whistles and rhetoric. Repetition is powerful and persuasive. Repetition builds muscle memory, memory muscle. Also, the more we hear things, the more likely we are to believe that they are true, even if they aren't. This is known as the illusory truth effect. We've all seen how the opposition uses repetition to drown out the truth, and we know that it works. But that's all the more reason we repeat, and repeat our messages so that we rally and persuade our base and bring others along. We also have to make sure that our messages are compelling enough so that people want to repeat them. Quality matters just as much as quantity. And remember Anat Shankar Osorya's mantra, if you aren't sick of hearing your own message, then you haven't said it often enough. Now back to Lisa.
So research shows that not only do words matter, but the order in which people hear the words matters. We call this the values, villain, vision, or 3V sandwich. What we want to do is lead with shared people-centered values. Then we narrate the reason why we don't have nice things and how villains use our differences to keep us divided. These are person-made problems and people can solve them. And the vision is the nice things that we can have if we work together. The vision is really what we are for, what we're fighting for. So Democrats and progressives tend to love to start with problems and statistics. People, though, have tons of problems these days, and they don't really want to hear yours. Think about the last time you might have been at a party and you got buttonholed by somebody who started droning on about all of their problems. Did that make you want to keep talking to them? Probably not. Why is it important to lead with shared values? Well, it's because most of us do want similar things. It establishes a we. Also, it keeps the listener willing to continue listening. Very important. A shared value should name race explicitly to counter racist dog whistles used by the opposition, but this can be done in multiple ways as we show here. We can say most of us, no matter what we look like or where we're from. So choices reflect our values. The recent New York City skyline on the left is very different than what it looked like when I moved there in 1976. But the picture on the right hasn't changed much in many neighborhoods. I did home care nursing for a number of years, so I can vouch for this. We can build these huge skyscrapers, but we can't maintain and create affordable housing. I mean, what's going on here? Well, for over 50 years, the GOP has been claiming to be the fiscally prudent party while giving huge tax cuts to the wealthy and large corporations, and at the same time promoting the scarcity myth, the myth that America just doesn't have the resources it needs to take care of its citizens. The US is an incredibly wealthy country and still is, but that wealth is increasingly concentrated in the hands of a small percentage of the population. And contrary to Reagan's voodoo economics, it doesn't trickle down. We need to communicate frequently, clearly, and loudly that our policies and lack of a social safety net reflect conscious choices that politicians make, not a lack of resources. So, now comes the villain part, which can be a little challenging for people. Naming and describing the villain ascribes motivation and explains why we don't have nice things and how the right uses our differences to divide us. Our enemy is not each other, but those who violate our values. There's a lot about what wealthy corporations and individuals are doing that angers people at a very visceral level. But progressives need to be a little careful when they're invoking these issues to avoid sounding anti-business, anti-work, or overly partisan. Emphasis on villains is typically very safe with the progressive base, but it can misfire with certain groups such as Latinos and rural voters. So we'll go into a little bit more detail here. So we want to make it clear, this is not name calling, but it's pointing out when certain groups, corporations, wealthy individuals, PACs, and politicians, you pick your poison, take specific actions that hurt people. We can't assume the average person understands why. The best way to fight disinformation is to describe the man-made origins, effects, and the solutions to inequality. However, there are a few caveats when you are naming the villain. You want to avoid saying the government or all politicians. people already have such a huge distrust in government, which has long been fomented by the right. So we don't want to give them a reason to have more. Also, we should usually refrain from saying that all of any group, say a handful or few certain, so it's less overwhelming, and also it avoids the exception to the rule trap. We are often asked if it's okay to name names. This is a bit of a judgment call, whether to name a specific villain, like, BP Petroleum, the Sackler family, the Koch brothers, there's plenty of them out there, versus more general villains, which is what we usually do in our examples here. Some politicians, huge corporations, the wealthiest 1%. This depends to a large extent on your organization, the specific issue, the platform, and your audience. So in general, we need to be a little careful when saying Republicans. It may alienate some Republicans who still identify as such, but not with the MAGA element of the party. If you must, you should again, say some or certain Republicans, Trump or MAGA Republicans, or be extremely specific. For example, you can say that no Republicans voted for the American Rescue Plan or the Inflation Reduction Act, because that is just fact. Also be a little careful about using the terms extreme and extremist. That can be somewhat problematic and make people think you're just falling into partisanship and name calling. And now on to Allie with a little grammar lesson.
When we talk about the villain, we need to use the active voice, not the passive voice. Do you see the difference between the first and second set of slides? In the first set, many people lost their homes. Our rivers and streams were polluted, but that's only telling part of the story. Corporate lenders are forcing people out of their homes, and some politicians are rolling back environmental protections and letting businesses pollute our waterways. Things don't just happen. These are conscious choices that people have made. The active voice pulls back the curtain so that we can see that there are real people or villains making these choices and causing harm. So in this case, the example of the passive voice here, our schools are underfunded, leaves a lot to the imagination. Who, how, and why are schools underfunded? The passive voice forces the listener to make assumptions, fill in the blanks, and often blames the victim, especially when they are people of color, about why these things happened, as if they happened naturally, or people made bad decisions, or they did something that landed them in this situation. In contrast, the active voice, some lawmakers consistently cut funding to our schools, especially those in poor communities, exposes the con, calls out the villain, the action, and the resulting harm. The active voice makes it clear that the actors caused the problem with intent. It also holds the actors accountable, and it signals that a problem that is person made can be person fixed. In this slide at the bottom, you'll see a link to analyze my writing. It's a great tool for checking your voice and other lexical features in your message. And now, Melissa.
So, providing our vision. The vision is really meant to show what's possible. So again, as Lisa referred to, too often we are stuck in the mindset of the scarcity myth. I think that's definitely changing in the last couple of years, as we've seen. We really need to make bold statements. And our vision signals how we all benefit when we stand together, when we build a cross-class, cross-racial coalition. This is less about a specific policy or politician and more about what we can do when we join together. It also reminds voters of their own agency and their ability to create change. And also, when possible, a call to action. And if you want to see good examples of providing visions, just look at some of the speeches coming out of now with the United Auto Workers. Lots of great vision. So how do we create the vision? Because everybody says we have great policies and we're going to be talking about them. So let me describe to you a really wonderful vision. You're super hungry and I'm going to give you, or you want something gooey and delicious. And I say, hey, great, here's a half a cup of butter. some flour, bittersweet chocolate, and a couple of eggs. Well, has that really satisfied your craving? Unlikely. And unfortunately, when it comes to speaking to voters, Democrats have a tendency to offer a laundry list of policy proposals that can relate to on a personal level. So now that you're aware of this, you'll probably start to notice how progressives just give out a recipe. Recipe is how we get to what we want. So paid family leave, what does that get to? Well, I'll show you in a minute. The brownie pushes back when someone thinks of a list of policies as enough to win over. We need to connect these policies to this really yummy, delicious outcome. So as I said, paid family leave. That basically means letting us take care of ourselves, our loved ones, and each other's. Or affordable housing allows everyone to have a place called home. Cancel student debt. Well, what does that really mean? It means we're launching our graduates into the working world with the freedom to achieve their dreams. So those are some brownies, and listed on the slide is, you'll see sentence starters and brownie examples, and we've gone through a lot of issues and kind of giving you a way of to reframe that from a half a cup of butter and melted butter and sugar and eggs to something delicious that you can sink your teeth into. Okay, the moment we've all been waiting for, because don't we all love do's and don'ts? We want to be talking about that big, beautiful tomorrow that we want and we deserve, and that we will achieve when we work together. So these next set of slides are going to show you some best messaging practices and traps to avoid. Number one, we should have called this don'ts and do's, because we're going to say, don't repeat the opposition. When we use the opposition's words, we're allowing them to control the narrative. And if you're not sure if you're in their narrative or in their frame, just look at the words that you're using and compare them. Number two, don't amplify the opposition. Please take a minute and make sure that you are not retweeting, requoting, re-Xing, liking, sharing content from the opposition, even if it's to refute or to make fun of them. The right wing profits off our rage, literally and figuratively, in terms of fundraising and amplification. And you never know, you could be elevating virtual unknowns to stardom by retweeting and repeating them. We have seen nobodies rise to fame because we've amplified them. Sharing also signals to social media platforms this is liked and popular content and propels it even further. Take a minute after this, over the weekend or when next time you're on social media, and scroll through your own social media or campaign website. How much airtime are you giving to them? And how much airtime are you talking about us or that big, beautiful tomorrow? We know the bad. We don't need to keep talking about it. We need to be putting out the positive impacts of what our policies are going to bring to people. And again, number three, numbers, statistics, and data. Oh my. So here on the screen is a message about the Infrastructure Jobs Act. Does that inspire you? These? Well, how about that? Senator Klobuchar, she's talking about what the bill, how it's going to make people's lives better. It means that Minnesota's kids can do their homework at home instead of in this parking lot. That's the brownie, not the billions of dollars that are getting funded for rural infrastructure or this number that's going that. To some people, that just sounds like a whole lot of money. Remember, data doesn't care about your feelings. It's not personal and it's not accessible. People don't connect to data, they connect to values. Data and statistics are great. We're not saying you shouldn't have them, but those are your inside voices that you talk with other activists and your team. But as an outside voice, it can backfire. Too much data and statistics may raise suspicions or cause people to not only reject the information, but they can be actually entrenched in their own positions. And also data points can be informative, but they can just be overwhelming and sounding like so much noise. And we have to just remember what motivates us is different than what motivates us to our base and kind of everyday people who aren't tuned in to everything. Okay, number 4, avoid negative framing. Yes, avoid putting a no in front of something just to counter it. Our brains are wired to recall the big words and before they do the small words. So the no and the stop and the can't, those words do not hold up to words like criminals or terrorists, or even in this other example, our brains just see Biden and president, which kind of defeats the message of whoever was putting this up there. So remember, big words need to tell that story, and just trying to negate it is not going to do enough. Number 5, expose the con. So we want to emphasize that Trumpists, MAGA Republicans are continuing to try to take away our freedoms and overthrow the will of the people. Taking away our freedoms is really something that people connect with. We want to connect what they were doing now to their past attacks on our freedoms and on the will of people, just like in January 6th. We want to avoid calling out hypocrisy. It's actually unpersuasive. Many people just think that's both sides. Also, avoid the framing of the right wing as authoritarian and strong. This can actually backfire, as some people actually perceive this as a positive. Look how many people idolize Putin now. To be honest, just remember, we should be spending less time talking about them and go on the offense and talking about us, because we have a lot of great things to talk about. As in slide number 6, tell people what we are fighting for and how will it benefit them. We can galvanize our base with values-forward, people-centric messages that leads with what we stand for. Number 7, okay, so what have we done? How about this? Let's celebrate our wins, remind people of what Democrats have accomplished in only 3 years, and use these wins to keep going. We want to, again, talk about the policies and the brownies feature, how they've made people's lives better, and get people excited. Check out the social media toolkit linked in this page and highlight some of our wins. Number 8, it's time we reclaim the word freedom. The 3 F's, freedom, family, and the future, do very well with many persuadables and our base. We need to be leaning into them. Wave your flag, as Simon Rosenberg, if some of you know who he is, Hopium Chronicles talks about, be the proud patriot. Lean into freedom, because that's what the right wing is trying to do, is take our freedoms away. Talk about the freedoms to vote and have our votes counted, the freedom to decide when or how to grow our family, the freedom to love who to love, the freedom to live in safe neighborhoods and know our kids are safe at school, etc. Number 9, make voters the heroes of the story. We want to center voters by naming them expressly and making them the heroes, not the government. So compelling new research by a group called the Winning Jobs Narrative, it suggests that we frame our policies as providing working people with tools and opportunities to succeed and lead a good life, versus helping. When we talk about helping, it can be perceived in many ways, for people looking for a handout or for lazy. And remember, America was founded on individualism, and like it or not, many people pride themselves on being able to support their families and kind of do things on their own. They say, I don't need help from the government. So we're not giving them help. We're providing tools and opportunities. And if you have a minute, Lisa, do we want to do this? Watch the video on how Biden's campaign makes voters the hero of his story.
In 100 years, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, but America fought back. Today, unemployment is at record lows. our economy leading the world. Joe Biden passed historic laws to rebuild the country, but he knows it's the American people who are the heroes of this story.
America is back. We've shown each other in the world that there's no quit in America. There's simply no quit in America.
In small towns and big cities, we're coming back stronger than ever. Manufacturing jobs are coming home. High-speed computer chips are getting made right here. America is leading the world in clean energy. There are some who say America is failing, not Joe Biden. He believes our best days are ahead because he believes in the American people.
Those who bet against America are learning how wrong they are. It's never, ever been a good bet to bet against America. No. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Okay.
And last, valuing hard work.
Sorry.
Research again from the Winning Jobs narrative finds that talking about valuing hard work is especially, Lisa?
I know, I need to, hold on. I'm trying to, there we go. I need to screen share. It's not letting me minimize.
You have become the wealthiest man in the world. It was fine being the second wealthiest person in the world.
Lisa, can you mute yourself while you're trying to figure
No, I'm
that
sorry,
out?
I'm trying to, sorry.
Prime.
Pause share, let's, okay. Stop share, I'll reshare, hold on, let me just get. I
Just
knew I-
just mute yourself though.
To criticize some things that the Washington Post says. I have no idea. What
No, I need to turn off the video.
Would you fix your time, please?
Well, people wouldn't recognize me if my tie was fixed, but
Thank you.
leave it this way.
If you just mute yourself, we can go forward while you figure that out though. Sorry.
I don't consider myself a journalist. Nobody else would consider myself a journalist.
I think I need to stop sharing and it's not letting me do it. Hold on.
No,
You've already stopped sharing.
Oh, have I?
Melissa,
Oh,
do you
yes.
want to,
I'm just,
yeah,
gonna-
Melissa, do you want to
there.
go
Okay,
forward with your
sorry
screen?
about that. I knew I should, no, I'll do it now. I'm okay. And we are, okay, now I need to share again, right? Sorry about that. Okay. I knew I shouldn't have tried that.
We've never had one of these hybrid meetings that have gone 100%.
No, I know. Share.
It's those
share.
big software companies again, doggone it.
Yeah, okay.
Name the villain.
Okay, are you now
We're
seeing my
gonna go
screen?
back up to hard work.
I will. Okay, slideshow. There we
Okay.
are. All
There
right.
we
sorry about that.
go. So this is something different that a lot of progressives usually have not talked about, but new research again by the Winning Jobs narrative has found that talking about valuing hard work is especially effective in rural areas, and Latino voters and voters who think progressives are out of touch. Leaning into Americans working hard acknowledges that, like I said, many people pride themselves in taking care of themselves, their families, and their communities. So this isn't pull yourselves up by the bootstraps, but this is, we come together as a community and I take care of my family. And there's nothing wrong with, pride and as shared around that dignity of work and valuing hard work. The Winning Jobs narrative, it's a great resource for messaging and webinars. They very slightly different than some of the messaging that ours was originally based on, the race class narrative. But if you want to check out the link at the bottom of the page, you can see more of their webinars and messaging that you might find helpful. As a recap, winning messages, no matter what frame, they need to be clear and concise and simple enough that an elementary school student would understand and repeat it to their friends. They need to lead with shared values, grounded in family, community, and country. They need to ascribe the blame, name how certain actors harm us, and make sure to describe how our problems are man-made and people can fix them. Remember, active, not passive voice. They need to make sure that the voters and not the government are the heroes of the story. Be aspirational, provide a vision, think big. And last, talk about what we're for. How will we improve the lives of everyday Americans? Now over to Lisa.
So just as you won't learn to speak a new language without actually talking to people, you need to practice this kind of messaging to get good at it. We actually spent hours reworking messages and found it helpful to work as a team. So we encourage you to work with your group. If you want, you can join our Slack community. There's a link there which you can pull up, and to workshop ideas with others looking to create similar messaging. These are several references that we developed ourselves, and they're kind of useful. The strategic policy statements are divided by topic, and we still refer to them fairly frequently. Here are many messaging resources. Again, these links will all be live in the PDF that you get. We've divided them by topic. There's a lot of stuff here. It may be a little overwhelming, but it's worth flipping through them if you are looking for a specific messaging strategy. Here are the groups that have done the research that a lot of those articles and messaging toolkits are based on. So you may find that you prefer one group's type of messaging than the other, but they're all worth looking at. And here's our social media. We're not particularly active right now, but if you want to get examples of messaging, you can scroll back to what is still up there, and you never know, we may get started again. So that's about it. These examples are just examples, and we are done. So I can stop my share and we can open it for Q&A.
Well, thank you so much. That was very good. A lot of information to take in.
It is a lot.
And I totally agree with you that Democrats tend to get lost in the nitty-gritty. I still remember thinking prior to Hillary even getting the nomination, she came out with those policy binders. And I thought, she's so smart. She's got every policy nailed, and nobody gave a crap. Nobody wanted to deal with it. And one of the quotes in this Keeping Posted that we just did recently was, if you ask a Republican a message, what's their message, they can tell it to you. If you're like an elevator speech, they can do an elevator speech, between the ground floor and the second floor. And for Democrats, it takes till you get to the 40th floor before we stop talking, because we have detailed messages about what all these wonderful things we want to say. And we just go into so much detail, and we tell them how to bake the brownie rather than focusing on the brownie. I think that was really, really helpful. Good, helpful advice. Who has questions? Kathy.
Like the speaker's opinion on in the Biden video that we saw, there was a shot of Trump again with the hat, and a very unflattering shot. Good. But I'm just wondering about repeating the opposition message or giving them any exposure. Your thoughts on using imagery like that in your pro message, versus eliminating that part of it completely, so you're not repeating an image of the opposition or their messaging. Just what are your thoughts on that?
I can take that. I think he was using it again. He was using kind of a sandwich where positive, that shared value. He named the villain. It was a very short clip, and it was very unflattering. Which is kind of exposing the con, and then went right back into, what we can do. The problem of giving the opposition too much airtime is that's usually all we do. When you're using it to quickly name a villain, that's different than when, again, look through people's social media feeds and just look at, some people exist in social media only to, they say expose, the right wing, but basically they're just amplifying.
Thank you.
George?
I have a question, when you use some Republicans or some legislatures, we have, basically most of the legislation which is being passed in critical areas is now, regardless of whether there's more or less moderate Republicans, they vote in lockstep in every single, important issue. So the question is, do you want to, I would try to emphasize that and say we need to get Democrats elected who will not do this.
I'll go for that one. I think you can do both. You can definitely, I think that the risk of saying all of them is there might be that one holdout Republican that is always going to side, is always the cross the aisle Republican. And so we can't, take such a broad stroke and characterize all of them unless, as we said earlier, it's factual, like the American Rescue Plan or Inflation Reduction Act. But the other piece of that is there could be some Republicans who don't identify as Republicans. And they're like, yeah, but I'm not one of them. So you want to be careful, with your audience, not just, who the politicians are, but who you're speaking to, and not overcast, this whole Republican image in, again, one broad stroke, because you might alienate that one Republican that actually agrees with you, but you've already sort of ostracized them as being one of them when they're really more like one of you. I don't know if I got everything that you were asking there.
My point here is the legislators.
Yeah.
If you are elected as a legislator, then whether you're moderate or not, you're still going to vote hardline Republican. So I'm not demonizing Republicans. I'm demonizing Republican legislators.
Yeah, I think that you can frame that as Lisa said, if they're all voting on that, then you're just stating a fact. You can say, so-and-so, just voted against this. You don't have to say, call them a MAGA Republican. You're just, putting that out there, voted with the extreme part of the party, for example. Or you can say, and when this terrible thing happened, so-and-so stayed silent. So that's how you can kind of point to them like, yeah, they're not quite with the MAGA, but either by silencing or by voting along with them, they're still doing that, the right wing's MAGA bidding. Does that help?
It does. I mean, I come from the state of Maine, and Susan Collins has been a thorn in my side forever. How she keeps getting elected when she clearly has never been a moderate in her voting has always mystified me.
All right, Jessica.
One of the things I'm hearing a couple of things. One of the things is when I tell them what conclusion they should come to, a lot of people's back goes up. I think one of the things I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm wrong or right, is lead them to the conclusion that you want them to come to without your giving them the conclusion. Is that something that is sort of in tune with this?
Can you give us an example? What do you mean you want them to come to a conclusion? Because when you said that, when I try to get somebody to come to this conclusion, immediately I just thought, like, as a parent, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know. It seems I sense a certain amount of resentment in people feeling talked down to and being sort of told what to say. I might be totally wrong on this. I also want to say that I've gone to a number of these because I do canvassing. I've gone a number of these presentations. None of them were particularly helpful. This one, I think, is really helpful. It requires a total sea change in my mind of how to talk to people. And I thought it was really useful, rather than pointing out that they all vote together. You point out that they're keeping the vision from happening. They're standing in the way of achieving what you and I both want. So it's totally different. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the way you presented it.
Can I just say something? We are now in Arizona, maybe you heard in our introduction, my introduction, we're talking about getting signatures for petitions to put abortion rights on the ballot so that it can be enshrined in the Constitution. The movement is being led by women's groups, mostly progressive women's groups. But when you talk to, I never heard this concept before, the good point people.
Right.
There's a book called The Persuaders, and it's like who you can persuade and who you can't persuade. And the people in the middle, the good point people, they're saying, hey, that's a good point. They may be swayable. So we know, for example, that the vast majority of people in this state support the freedom to choose when and if to have a family. So maybe we should be bringing people of on the other side to our cause here and see if they would be interested in signing or circulating petitions, because we know that so many of them believe in the same thing we do. And maybe some people are one-issue voters. Maybe it means so much to them that they will relax their stance and vote for a candidate who is for reproductive freedoms. I mean, I never thought about it, but we could approach ROAR. This is something we could do and see if they're interested. George?
Yeah, there was an article in the Arizona Mirror yesterday, which I found particularly terrifying. And it really gets to this kind of dilemma because it's talking about how abortion rights or anti-abortion policies are basically the camel's nose in the tent. What they're trying to do is eliminate birth control by naming personhood at the point of conception. And so when you're doing that, I'm guessing you want to frame it not as they are defining it this way, but this would mean you have no liberty to control your own life if you're a woman.
Right. Toby?
Yesterday at a meeting, they said 9 out of 10 people in Arizona support this. So we're not looking at a lot of people who don't. And that's including, of course, you know, a third Republicans, a third independents, and a third Democrats. So the Republicans are probably, Republican women are probably on our side.
I've been sitting in, sorry.
Yeah,
No, I've been sitting in on a number of the reproductive rights calls from various groups. First of all, a ban is a ban is a ban is the last message I came through. You know, forget about exceptions. Still, the numbers are that people, particularly now that Roe has been taken away, they're suddenly waking up and saying, oh God, this really could affect me or somebody that I love. So those are important things to just keep in mind. And it still can be a nuanced conversation, but we don't need to be on the defense about this. And there's a couple of good resources at the end of the slide deck, which I put the link in the chat. So if you want to pull those up, the National Institute of Reproductive Health has some very good materials on this. Any doctor can tell you, you don't know how a pregnancy is going to turn out. And the woman needs a person giving birth, however you want to phrase it. I know there's a lot of political discussion about whether we want to bring into the discussion the fact that trans men could be giving birth, but a person giving birth needs every option to take care of their safety and health, basically. So
I was just gonna say, look at the Kansas election and how they framed it. Now they didn't really talk about abortion. Of course, that was all of what, 4 or 5 months ago. It seems like a year ago.
It was a year ago. It's Ohio is now. Kansas.
Kansas was a year ago. Okay, yeah, so that's why it's inside. I was like, God, it's that link. But and so that makes sense because in 1 year when the Kansas went, they were very squishy about talking about abortion, and they framed it as just a freedom and government freedom, and that's what I was just meaning is you might be able to get some people on your side, that way. Although even in that last year, in this last year, as these stories come out, not even just about abortion, now the news stories that come out about ER doctors saying, they can't do their jobs, nothing related to abortion doctors. So Ellie has her hand raised, but yeah, I think getting that on the ballot is always a winner. Talking to people, if you're talking to more conservative women, there's always the people, as Allie's little funny slide with the dog jumping up and down and the bulldog on the ground. There are people you will never, ever get, and don't waste your time getting them. But there are many women, especially, that you are gettable on this. Don't listen to what any media says that maybe abortion. Remember when Roe fell and they thought that issue was going to go away? That issue is only building steam, and people are angry and they are voting on this issue. It is much bigger than abortion. It is having your freedoms taken away. So you have some work to do, I think, with those women, but they are gettable.
Do we have people on the Zoom that have questions, Toby?
Wait, can I say one thing? Can I go back to the point prior to the abortion question, to the person who said, the canvasser who said that when they talk to people, and thank you for the praise of our webinar, appreciate it. But I am coming at this also with a lot of canvassing, and I just wanted to, about the vision. And I think one of the takeaways from what we're sharing today is that a lot of it is the translation from the policy into what people really want. We all want the same things. Polling, everything, we are on the right side of these issues. And I think sometimes we overthink what we're talking about. We think in terms of policies, but that's not what people are hearing. They want to hear what makes the most sense to them, to their families, to the people they love, to their community. And so I think, I think the same person said, it's like a reframe. We need to reframe and change this paradigm and not think so technically and so wonky. And we're like that. I think we're a lot of us are built like that. That's why we're on the call together, because we think so deeply about the issues and the nuances. But we have to back out of that and take a big picture approach. And how are you talking to that person who doesn't read the news every day, who might not even read the news at all? Think about these people who aren't the diehard sports fans. They're not diehard political wonks. These are our neighbors. These are the doors that you're knocking. So, again, I've a big canvasser and I've organized canvases, and people get really caught up in the detail of yes, you do need to know your candidate. I'm not throwing away anything that's really important and their talking points and things like that. But when they're talking, the bottom line is, if you're knocking on a door and you're talking about education, 99% of parents with kids in a school want the classroom sizes to be a reasonable size. They want their educators to be fairly compensated. They want to have their kids feeling safe in schools, right? And those are what we need to deliver. If they ask about the policy of how we're going to get there, that's a separate conversation. But more often than not, you don't need to get into that kind of detail when you have 30 seconds to get your message out to somebody, and at a doorstep or at a social media message or at whatever. So again, I want to recognize what that person said earlier. And I really do think that that's one of the biggest takeaways from what we're sharing today is, if you're worried about getting caught up in the statistics, what do you want? What do you want for yourself? What do you want for your family? What do you want for your community? And if you just think about the things you want, more often than not, that's what the next person wants. And talk to them like a person and not like a policy wonk. And I think you'll get more going. more out of that conversation. That's, I just wanted to, again, go back to that prior point, but thank you.
We do have a question from somebody on Zoom. What messaging is effective to counter opposition to the MAGA messaging, to critical race theory and book banning messaging from Moms for Liberty?
I'm just going to say that's it's very detailed. That's a good question. There's lots of polling. There's lots of messaging. Like what we're doing today is really giving the broader big picture, how to address some of these issues more broadly and the do's and don'ts of messaging and how to frame it. But to get into something as specific as that, I would refer to the people who are really working in that space. You know, Red, Wine, and Blue is doing great work with relational organizing, really taking on the book bans. I think some library associations are also fighting back. And I think that they're like, you know, I would refer to the experts who are working in those spaces. I know for like just off the top of my head, a lot of people are coming back with this message of for school boards working with the teachers. They want people who are going to work with the teachers and partner with them to make our schools better. So we're not alienating the people who work in, you know, who are the experts that we trust. The majority of parents trust the teachers. And we want to reinforce that trust and build that trust even more. And then we have like basically people who are swooping in and trying to discredit them. So, you know, I think to that question, there's, yeah, Lisa wrote, there's resources in the PDF. So I would refer to that just because it requires a much more specific sort of framing to
But
counter those.
you can keep using the freedom framework also, though, the freedom to learn. Most people, pretty much everybody wants their children to have the freedom to learn both the good and the bad about our history so that they can, you know, move forward in society. But yeah, we have a good 7 or 8 pretty good documents in there done by people who are.
Yeah, and I think it's just important. I think the message that, you know, calling out the villain of, you know, what they're really trying to achieve. You know, they're trying to do this so that we're fighting each other and we're looking the other way and don't see that they are robbing our schools of the resources they need. So, you know, that is, you know, what the moms and the right wing is trying to do.
And also you can tell, any parent here knows that you tell a kid that they can't read something, and that's what the book that they're going to go to the library. You know, so book bans are not popular.
What book am I not supposed to read, Mom?
Yeah. What did they ban? There's probably something pretty juicy in there. So
we have another question in here.
I see the Republican Party as like a giant puffball. It looks big, but there's absolutely no substance in it. And so that being said, in 2020, they didn't even have a platform to run on. So I'm thinking if the Republican strategy, such as it is to turn people against each other, think how weak the Republicans happen to be, and why can't we spend more time developing a strategy to turn them against each other?
I think that's spending time on them, and we should be talking about us. And I'm just gonna leave you all with kind of hopefully a rah-rah. As Ali said, you know, our policies, democratic policies are good. Democratic policies are popular. We are in the right on where we stand on all the main issues. We're with the majority, and if we're not, we're morally in the correct. And we should be loud and we should be proud of what we accomplish, what the Biden administration has accomplished, what Democrats all over the country up and down the ballot are accomplishing. Let them, we should not completely ignore them, but let them fight each other. And we need to put out positive information into the ecosystem. One of the strategies with MAGA is to flood the zone with shit, literally is what it's called. They put so much out there that the normal person is just confused and doesn't know what to think. We need to flood the zone with, unicorns and rainbows, because we are delivering unicorns and rainbows. We are delivering rainbows and, you know, warm chicken soup, you know, and people, the more they hear that, you know, they need to hear that. Really, I think, you know, one of MAGA's strategy of flooding the zone is they don't want America, and they want us to hate each other because they want to stay in power just for that. And if they put all those negative sentiments, we're going to feel bad about America. And, you know, there's been so many times where progressives haven't wanted to have American flag or freedom because, oh my God, that sounds like a MAGA. No, we need to be loud and proud about it and what we have achieved, what we're going to achieve. So that's my, but do it in a brownie. As I said, rainbows and chicken sandwiches, chicken soup, hot chicken soup and delicious brownies.
And I'll just add to what Melissa said. The same, you know, with the same rah-rah is people don't even know what's possible. I mean, think about how disheartened people are and down on politics, on politicians and the whole thing. And like, people are running away from elections. They're running away from like the things that we hold near and dear to our hearts. And we don't understand why, because you know, there's so much negativity. So like as messengers, if we can bring with the chicken soup and the brownies, if we can bring, you know, just not even just that positivity, it's that and painting that picture and showing them and telling them what's actually possible. I mean, imagine your community building that's now going to be green, you know, that it's going to be more cost effective, more energy efficient, it's going to lower costs, it's going to offer all of these benefits to the people who, you know, these are our tax dollars, these are things, these are why we're paying taxes, we're getting these beautiful things from it. I mean, I wouldn't dwell on taxes so much, but I'm again using my insider voice, I wouldn't necessarily go talking taxes to anybody, but among us, you know, it's really important that we recognize like what's possible. I mean, school districts through the federal funding are getting electric school buses. I mean, who would have thunk, you know? So, I mean, imagine the whole district with electric school buses every morning throughout the community, and there's no more, you know, pollution, and it's a beautiful thing to see. So these are the things that are possible. We're seeing them become realities, and really dwell in that space of the possibilities and talk to people so they can see themselves in, you know, their kids riding in an electric school bus or saving money when they go to pay their utility bills and things like that. Like those are the things that we're translating in ways that are resonant, can be really you know, again, seen in a way that they see themselves in that picture and why it's so important and the impact that we're having. So yeah, I would just want to leave it there.
All right. Anything else you three would like to share with us? This has been fabulous.
Mm-hmm. I did put the links to the PDF. I quickly did the PDF. You're welcome to send it out as in the email also. And a link from a Sunday New York Times Magazine article about the abortion issue. I did it as a gift thing. So if you don't subscribe, you can click on it now and you'll still be able to read it. It has some just interesting, encouraging news about, you know, what's happening on the abortion front, more from a political standpoint. So that's about it. So you need to do that.
Thank you so much. This has been terrific. Thank you, Janine, for organizing the program. The people that are in this room, the people that are watching on Zoom, we are the ones that are interested enough to be here. We care enough. We want to make change. Informing ourselves like this can sometimes be overwhelming. In our Keeping Posted, Janine listed a lot of resources. I mean, you can literally spend all day, every day, looking through these great resources. I recommend Simon Rosenberg, Opium Chronicles, because he goes over and over a lot of what these three women have talked about. the good, the positive things that are happening under Joe Biden. We have so much to be proud of. We need to educate ourselves. It's incumbent upon us, and hopefully that will catch on to other people in the community that will want to be ambassadors as well. But this is a great first step in thinking about the messaging that we do and structuring it. So go back and look at Keeping Posted. It gives the, you know, the values, the villains, and the vision. It talks about all of that. This is all here for us. Don't be overwhelmed. It's what we have to do. It's really what we have to do to save ourselves. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Any more discussion before we?
I just wanted to say that I wrote down in caps at the end, that we need to have voters see themselves in this picture. And we just need to talk simply. We have to simplify everything.
We have to simplify it. You're exactly right. Sometimes, I mean, like last month, we put together the program, a lot of you were here, on the Inflation Reduction Act. And I think, is that too much for people? Do people know what it is? Will people remember what it is? Is that too technical just to name the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan, Toby's telling me to back it up. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. There's all this great stuff that the Biden people, you know, that has happened. The Republicans are all voting against, yet they're showing up at the ribbon cutting ceremonies. I mean, how simplistic is simplistic enough?
And what they're gonna get out of it, not the names. I don't know about FIP. I don't know about any of that shit. But if the bridge is falling down and it's gonna be fixed because of this act, that's what people care about. So I think it has to be that simplistic. At least that's my take of it, is that if you're trying to tell people that that Democrats are doing really good things, nobody cares unless they can see, as you say, see themselves in the picture.
You're right.
And they
You're
see
right.
themselves in the picture and have heard about how all the bridges are falling down. They're all gonna be fixed.
And we have a wonderful example in Philadelphia. Hometown.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that bridge in Philadelphia, after the fire, I thought, well, shit, that's gonna be months and months and months, and boom, it was done in 2 weeks.
That's right.
Chris?
I agree. I think we should take an example from each, from CHIPS Act and Inflation Reduction Act, but it's something that relates to where we live.
Right.
Yeah.
There is a
One
website-
example that relates to Arizona and use that over and over again.
Solar, the increase in solar.
Ellen?
There is a website that you can follow where the dollars go in your local community. It's hard to maneuver through. So I'm working on guides for that, but I'll get that to you so you can share it.
Well, you know what Janine's been working on is we want to do a door hanger called DORR, a door hanger that will list Biden accomplishments.
Yes.
Well, she's having one hell of a time because there are so many of them, condensing them and simplifying them. One other thing that I heard on one of the calls I was on this week was stop using euphemisms like reproductive rights.
Right.
Say the word abortion. Say it.
But if you look at those Biden ads, and I have seen them on television, I think they're very effective. He says, manufacturing's coming back to America. That's, I mean, you talk about broad, but that's really important. Just that broad. So the door hanger can really be, for my sense, that broad. They, you know, sort of, if we're talking rainbows and unicorns, you know, I mean, so if you look at the Biden ads, you'll see how broad they're willing to be in terms of accomplishments. And my gut is that really is effective.
But also the local, like Julie is pointing out.
Well, if you should find local stuff.
I think it also really comes down to knowing your audience.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're talking to an audience like this, of people that are not super informed, and you say abortion, people get kind of scared. But if you're talking to a ton of Gen Z new voters, they want you to say abortion. They want you to make it clear. So I think it just really comes down to knowing your audience and doing that research, even if it's just when you're canvassing, oh, this person's age is, 29. Well, maybe I'll tailor it this way,
Ellen, we got Ellen. Kat Ginzel has her hand raised on Zoom.
Okay, Kat, and then Kathy.
Hey there, great meeting. I
We-
just, I wanted to say, I'm on board with this, gathering petitions over here in Rimrock, and I would like to, I'm sure I have permission to do this. I'd like to share this recording with my group, so it will help people with gathering, signatures.
That would be great. That would be fine. By next week, Shelley will have this put up on the DORR YouTube channel,
Yes.
along with all of our previous breakfasts. So
Great,
yeah,
thank
Kat,
you.
please do that.
And
Wonderful,
before
thank
Kathy
you.
goes, Linda has her hand up also. So after Kathy, I'm sorry, because I know you said.
Okay, Kat.
I just want to reinforce, I think Jessica made an excellent point using the example of manufacturing jobs are coming back, because if you just say jobs are coming back, it's too broad. If you go into the list, it's too, we're killing them with too much, but to say manufacturing, or in our area to say restaurant, restaurant workers are back. You can get a seat in a restaurant. You can get service because we're serving that. You can find local examples of that to use without going into the specifics, but it's specific. It's like it's the right balance. It's specific, but not too specific.
Right.
So I just wanted to
like that.
reinforce that.
I like that. Was it Linda?
Yes, it was Linda. Linda, unmute yourself.
Thank you so much for this presentation today. I really enjoyed it. This is a little off topic, but I thought perhaps you folks might have an opinion about this. We make a lot of phone calls. People don't answer their phones, but they have message machines. And I'm wondering what you think. We haven't been leaving messages. What do you think? Do you think that's the best approach and we just keep making calls till we find someone that picks up their phone? Or should we be leaving voicemails? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Are you
Are you
talking to Ally?
I always leave a voicemail whenever I've done phoning, only because you get so few people that actually answer. What's the harm? They can always just delete it.
I think I think it goes back and forth. I've heard people organizing phone banks that say don't leave a message because it's a waste of time. I don't know. And then people push back on that. I don't know if there's any hard data that says what the actual best practice is on that. I don't know. That's my answer.
It would also depend on the length of the message and what you're doing. If you're just reminding people to vote, for example, if a get out the vote thing, I think it's always worth leaving the reminder. If you're actually phoning for a candidate and maybe wanting to talk about things, I don't know.
Okay. I was just curious if there were any.
But I agree with Ally. I don't think there's any data on it. I don't think anybody's really researched it.
Thank you.
I can tell you from the point of view of a phone caller making those calls, it's very ungratifying if you get one after another voicemail and you just can't get your message across. So even if you leave a 15-second call saying, I'm calling on behalf of Ruben Gallego, hope you'll consider him. Just get his name in front of them.
Exactly.
I used to do that for Felicia all the time. Just that one more person that hears the name Felicia French.
Right.
I just want to give you guys a quick example that I use. I don't say that Biden infrastructure bill has brought jobs to Arizona or improved things. What I do around here is I say those improvements on 17 are a direct result of the Biden infrastructure bill. And I always add, and that means every person out there working on that has a job because of it.
Right.
So that it's something they visually, we've all seen those guys out there working. That money's coming from that bill.
You know what? What's interesting, 2 weeks ago, I was in Hyde Park, New York with some friends. We went to the FDR Museum and Library. And in there are displays about the Civilian Conservation Corps, the Works Progress Administration, things like that. What was done under FDR literally changed the face of this nation, the physical face of this nation. The Civilian Conservation Corps planted 3 billion with a B, 3 billion trees. They put They made parks, they made roads, they did so much good. And I see a lot of this happening now under the Biden, under the infrastructure bill and things like that. We are changing the face and revitalizing the road structure in this country right now. And we need to make sure people know exactly that's where the money's coming from. And all the Republicans are doing is bitching about how much money we're spending. Well, let's not give it to the billionaires as tax cuts. Let's use it for us.
Great.
Okay, anything else? This is great. I mean, I love and value the discussion that we can have as a group. We were planning, Mark Anton, one of our board members, has suggested that for the February meeting, we just sit down as a group and talk. Just DORR people.
Nice.
And I think that would be nice. I think there's no end of topics that we would come up with to talk about. Kath?
Just one more point in the messaging, when we're talking about Biden, to refer to it, Biden-Harris. We need to always bench build as well. She is a part of this administration. She does not get the credit that she deserves for that. It is one administration, Biden-Harris, the Biden-Harris administration. If Biden want to get reelected, we can't leave her or out of the mix. If we were talking about, you know, how does something come to you? Well, it was Biden and Mark Kelly that brought this to you. You know, I mean,
Right.
you know, we need to show that support and get those names out there as well.
Agreed, 100%. Raya?
So I came late, I apologize, and I imagine this was mentioned. I just heard the word values, but talking to people in terms of what they value, like with the manufacturing jobs, and this increases our self-sufficiency, our independence, if that's what they value.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Lama?
I just wanted to make a quick plug that we are having a volunteer meetup for DORR for canvassers and neighborhood people to come. It's going to be October 14th at 10 a.m. at Diana Christensen's house in VOC. Come talk to me if you're interested. We would love to have you. We are going to have training on the abortion rights petition and on the Reuben Gallego nomination petitions. So come talk to me if you're interested.
Great, thank you. Thank you for all you're doing for us, Lama. And thank you to Diana, our vice president.
That's great.
All right. So we have more in common than divides us.
Yes, we do. We do. All right. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your time.